there are a lot of logical things that you don't see when you're filled with anxiousness.
Yes.
I started Googling and I was freaking out. I just had kids. I don't want to die. Like, I don't like, these are like real normal fears.
Gerry, hi.
Hi, I'm so excited to talk to you.
I'm excited to talk to you too. The biggest question of all, who are you?
I'm Gerry. I'm 32. I am a military wife and I'm a mom to two twin boys that are 4, and they take up all of my life. I was diagnosed in 2018 in Colorado, actually. Since I was diagnosed, we've moved 4 or 5 times. We live in Florida now. In my past life, I used to be in marketing, so I still do some marketing stuff.
That's a lot. So military wife,
Yeah.
mother, pulmonary hypertension, because I know you've diagnosed, but just for people who are not aware of what's going on.
I was diagnosed originally because I was pretty sick, but I just thought we had just moved to Colorado
Yeah.
from sea level to super high altitude. So I thought a lot of it was like altitude sickness. And you're able to like justify symptoms all the time, right? So like I justified a lot of the symptoms and I said, I just had the boys. So I was like
Mhm.
postpartum,
Yes,
all of
it's
that stuff.
everything. Right.
And like your body's just like so weird after giving birth. So like there was just a lot of things. So like I just didn't know how sick I was until I was like really sick. Like I got diagnosed originally with mild pulmonary hypertension and mild heart failure. And I
Okay.
went to see a specialist 2 weeks later and I was severe and started a pump like that week. It was crazy.
So that was like major, major shift. Yeah, in two
Yeah.
weeks, it all hit the fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they told me about
Wow.
you. They told me to look you up and
Oh
I
my
did.
goodness. Wow. Well, good, I guess.
I was super active. My husband and I did CrossFit together. We've been in CrossFit competitions. I played competitive soccer.
Very
For a while,
active. Yeah.
yeah, for a while, I thought I had exercise induced asthma because I
Huh.
had a hard time catching my breath. And now I look back and I'm like, was that a sign? But
Hmm.
I think one of the weirdest signs that we still talk about now. So like with heart failure, you get this like this cough. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Dry cough.
So
Yeah.
when I met my husband, we've been married for 6 years. When I met my husband, I had this cough for years. And he had never known me without a cough
Right.
until after I started treatment and it just went away. And it's weird because I look back and I'm like, how did we think that cough was okay? But then also like, was the cough okay? Like, am I just like,
Oh,
is it just coincidental that, heart failure causes a cough and I had a cough, or did I just always have a cough?
yes, I do know. I literally know.
Yeah, so I've had like a really rough stint when it comes to like doctors and like treatment. So like when we were in Colorado, I was obviously their team is great. So like I was with a great team and I got diagnosed, and then like 3 weeks after I got discharged, we moved to Alabama. So I had just gotten diagnosed and then I had to start treatment, and then I was like, sorry, we have to leave. Like we're leaving the state. And they were like, can you just stay? Like, can you not
Right,
like
because
just
it's your life.
stay?
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, I mean, I guess I could stay, but like I was so sick. And like I had twin boys by myself. My
Wow.
husband was working, like, I mean, he's busy. He's not like, it's not like the military is just going to be like, yeah, you can just stay
I'm
home as
taking
long as
off
you
some,
want.
yeah, exactly.
So I was like, I have to go because he's my only means of support here. So when we moved, I had to reestablish with a team. But like I had a really rough stint in Alabama with like line infections and stuff. So the treatment helped, like the Remodulin helped. It increased. I'm better now, obviously.
Right.
But it was like really bad. And like the line infections were really rough. But like even though I was having line infections, my heart got better. So they actually ended up taking me off altogether and putting me on orals.
Interesting.
Um,
That's great.
yeah. And then we moved to Florida
Okay.
and I started seeing Mayo, which has been great. And they're a great team. And they put me back on a pump because the orals weren't working. So I failed orals.
Interesting. So it's fluctuating for you.
Yeah.
Obviously, medication plays a part, but do you feel like your lifestyle plays a part in the fluctuation as well? Like how well you take care of yourself, or is it just random, do you think?
I think I think maybe a little bit. Probably I could take better care of myself, probably could do cardio from time to time. But my doctor at Mayo said that they didn't think that the equivalent of my IV was the same as what they put me on in an oral. So
Okay.
like instead of like a lateral transition, it was like they gave me less oral medicine. So I wasn't getting as much. So they don't think I got a fair shake at oral. So they think they offered oral 6 months ago probably. And I said no because I was really sick on the oral. Like I was just like nauseous all the time. But
Yeah.
I think I could have probably done okay on oral medicine if, it had been the right dosage, like if it had been a lot of those things, So I think it's more doctor error than it is like lifestyle error, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah. And it's such a tricky, I mean, oh, and I get it so much going from one doctor to the next. It sounds like you were diagnosed though, like you're once it was all sort of quick in a sense. And you didn't go through, like I had gone through 5 years of being misdiagnosed by all these doctors, but you don't have that history with diagnosis.
I had probably, like I had the boys in July and I didn't get sick until the next June. But like I was, it's hard to say
It
what
was
was bad and
building,
what was right. So I thought a lot of it was allergies moving to
right?
Colorado.
Yes.
I was having a hard time catching my breath, but like we'd also moved to altitude.
It took sort of that year to get to where you figured it out,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I don't know, looking back, I feel like pregnancy probably like exacerbated the situation. I
Right.
feel
The
like it's
problem
probably
there.
always, yeah, I feel like it's always just lived there. I
Yes,
think it wasn't exacerbated until I gave birth to two humans instead of
exactly.
just one
That
human.
pushes it over the thing or could push it
Yeah.
over. Yeah, exactly. Why do you have a Southern accent? I want to know where that comes from. That's important. All of a sudden
People
you come
ask
out with
me
a
that all
Southern
the
accent. You're
time.
like,
That is
yeah,
so funny. We live in Florida and people think that I have such a Southern accent and I
you
don't hear it.
do.
That's what I'm told.
Yeah,
I'm
you
from
really
North
do.
Carolina.
You
So
are.
I was raised in North Carolina. So whatever you're hearing is North Carolina.
And where's your family from? Like, where's your background?
My parents are Vietnamese.
Both Vietnamese.
Yeah,
Also Vietnamese with a Southern accent. I love
I
that.
know.
That's
That's
so
so
great.
funny.
I imagine you've learned a lot going through all of this with regard to your health. What are a few things you feel like you know now that are very clear to you that if you could have told yourself then these things, it would have been great, to be able to say to your earlier, younger version, this is what you're about to learn.
I really wish that I had known that my skin was so sensitive. So my problem with the IV
Mhm,
was that when they started it, when they place your line, they clean you with ChloraPrep, they
mhm.
stick the line in, and then they slap a Tegaderm on it, right? I'm allergic to all of those things.
Oh,
So like within like like a week and a half of getting the line placed, I had like a blister like on
geez.
my skin. And they were like, you must be allergic to the dressing. So we kept using the chlorhexidine and didn't know that it was all it's literally all. I got 2 line infections because of the sensitive skin, and I'm on sub Q now. And I think that that's probably the most important thing that
Yeah,
I figured
yeah.
out is that like I'm allergic to everything. Like,
Like, let's say there was no illness, thoughts of illness, but just life.
yeah,
Anything that you've learned now that you're like, oh my goodness, if I had known this then, or things that you might have not thought about then that you think about now.
I like had community, but it wasn't something that was like super important until I was sick and I realized that I needed the community to be there for us, like to pray for us, to be there for us, to come watch the kids, to come clean the house. So, like our friends were like so great. And I just feel like if I'd known how important the community was going to be, I feel like we might have taken a different path, like being military. Like, but right before I was diagnosed, my husband had the opportunity to get out of the military. And
Okay.
I feel like if we had had the opportunity to stay close to our families, like our parents live like 8 hours away. Like if I'd had the opportunity to be closer to my family going through diagnosis and
Yes.
going through treatment and all of that stuff, I feel like that would have been a game changer for like just life in general. Like it's nice when they come visit because we have grandparents to watch the kids, you know, but like we don't have that. And I feel like I just didn't realize how important that was going to be as I got older, you
Mhm.
know?
Yes, I do know. I do know. And do you feel like you live with a lot of fear, or is that not something that hasn't taken you over really? Is that not a part of your life?
I'm not a big fear person. I don't know. I feel like I have a pretty good coping mechanism when it comes to being like fearful or being anxious.
Okay.
I am very, I don't know. I feel like my faith changed a lot going through diagnosis, right? Because like you're taught all of these things in church, but like you don't learn them like in practice until you're going through
Of
something,
course,
right?
of
So
course.
I feel like my faith keeps me from being fearful a lot. I think it's also my personality. Like I've never been somebody that was like scared of stuff, you know? Like if we're gonna do it, let's just do it. Like
Exactly. But even so when you were diagnosed, you didn't have this overwhelming sense of, and I'm just asking personally because I was like, oh my God, and I'm typically like, let's go for it, and live and go. But when it comes to your life and your health, did you feel that originally when diagnosed, or even then, did you sort of keep your distance from all that?
so I feel like I like can catch myself, right? Like I caught myself. So they diagnosed me. Obviously, as human nature, you like freak out and I cried and I was
Right.
like super stressed. And then I called a bunch of my friends and they were like, you know, there are a lot of logical things that you don't see when you're like filled with anxiousness.
Yes.
I started Googling and I was
Mhm.
freaking out. You know, I just had kids. I don't want to die. Like, I don't like these are like real normal fears. But then I also like didn't let myself live there.
Yeah.
And I'm like really big on like holding space for those feelings because those are valid feelings. They're very natural diagnosis feelings. But
Yes.
also, like, I have worked on my mental health for a really long time. I was like super depressed when I was in high school. So
Mhm.
like I also understand not giving them more attention than they need, you know? Like I hold the space for the feelings, I hold the space for the fear and the anxiety, and then I also don't give it too much room to grow. Like I don't like for it to grow. I don't like to like sit on it and dwell on it, right?
Yes. It's a bit like the thing that I was talking about. I talked about my 5 minutes of like, I let myself feel that for 5 minutes and I'm like, just go at it and just worry and cry and whatever you need to do. But then after your 5 minutes are up, just move on because that stuff can become just so overwhelming in your mind. And it sounds like
Yeah.
you had experience getting yourself into the right place, growing up so that you could
Yeah.
be ready for this.
With PH being the kind of roller coaster it is, I was thinking about you right before you messaged me because 2 weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving, I got a really bad echo. I
Hmm.
wrote about it on Instagram, but they told me that my echo was bad enough that we needed to start talking transplant. And I freaked. And like, you know, transplant is a word that we don't use a lot. I haven't had it. Like it's totally voodoo in our community. Like I don't like talking about it. And when
No.
he said it, I froze and then like I shut down. And he was like looking at me and my doctor was looking at me. He was like, "You're freaking out." And I'm like, "Yes, I'm freaking out. Did you hear what you just said to me?" And he was like, "It's okay. It's going to be fine." And I'm like, I could not hear anything else that he had to say. And then I left and I was crying. I cried, you know, we live 2.5 hours from clinic. So I cried the whole way home. I
Yes.
called all of my friends and
Yes.
I was like, but Chloe did it. So I think it'll be okay. Cause I know a couple of other people that have had transplants
Yeah.
and that are all living their best lives right now.
Yeah.
But it's so scary. And I was just like, I held space for that. Right. So like, it was a really scary couple of days and I was like freaking out. But I did have a right heart cath Thursday, last
Okay.
Thursday,
Wow.
and everything's fine.
Oh,
So
that's amazing. Are you kidding? That's huge. You just
yeah,
said that
so
like nothing. I'm like, that's the biggest news that's like worthy of newspapers. You know what I mean? Everything is
yeah,
fine.
so the echo showed like really severe heart failure, and they thought that the medicine wasn't working. Or they went in for the heart cath,
Yeah.
and the numbers were normal. I mean not normal. My pressures are like crazy, but the my cardiac output's normal, my function is normal, my
Wow.
EF is normal. It's just I operate with really high pressures. So
I
they were like,
understand. Yeah.
your heart is fine. And I was like, oh, so
Amazing.
we're not
It
talking
makes sense.
transplant?
Like, I mean, that's like the greatest gift you could, but just so you know, in our family too, it was like anywhere surrounding me, I couldn't even say the word transplant. Like if anybody said transplant about anything, it was like, get out of my face. It was scarier to me than dying while I
Yeah.
was going through that. Or so I thought until actually on life support facing death. And you're like, oh my God, please give me a transplant, you know? So I completely understand. But just to tell you, I mean, as I always tell people, I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, but it has been absolutely unbelievable. I cannot like, and I don't mean to be like promoter of transplants, but like I cannot tell you how happy I am and how well I feel. And it's so amazing. So I try to just tell people who are confused that obviously, hopefully it doesn't ever come to that. But if it ever does, I wish I had known more about the good things because I was always like, oh my God, but life expectancy, what if you die? What if you, and then medicine and da. And the medicine's nothing compared to pH medicine. I mean, nothing. You take a couple pills twice a day and then, I mean, a couple, it's more than a couple, but it becomes a lot less over time.
Yeah.
I can do everything and it's just a complete miracle. So I just wanted to put that out that so far. And then I have a friend who I found, well, he became a friend 30 years later. He's been living with a double lung transplant. He's doing amazingly. He's
That's
like,
awesome.
I mean, it's so great to hear that. And then he sends me other great stories of like, well, this woman's 25 years later and she's, you know, and I'm like, oh my God. So it's just anything you can hear that's good is good, you know? Again, I don't try, no one knows what's going to happen to anyone tomorrow.
Yeah.
I just take my life as it comes and I'm just so appreciative that I'm alive and feeling well. And I hope for you, it doesn't ever, of course, get to that. Is there something you say to yourself to get yourself out of that? Because I know you let yourself have your moment, but then do you actually have like a thing that you're like, Gerry, da, 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 that gets you out of that thought? Because how can somebody else get out of that thought is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
You know?
So what I tell myself, and I don't know how practical it is, but sometimes I will like sit and I will like think about it. And then I'm like, can you control what happens?
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, in generally speaking, probably a little bit, right? I could probably go low sodium. I could probably watch my fluid. Like I can do all those things. But if we're already at the point of talking transplant, like none of those things are going to help me. Mm-hmm. So I sit back and I think, can I control this? And I say, well, no. And I go through this dialogue in my head. Can you control this? No. Well, then why are you freaking out about it if you can't control it? And I'm like, I don't know, because I'm scared and blah, 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 and all these things. And then I hear my friends in my head saying, well, like, if you can't control it and you're scared, those are valid feelings. But also at the end of the day, if you can't control it, you can control that you're scared. You can control that you can control your feelings, right? You can control where your mind goes when it wanders. And that's the most dangerous thing, right? Being sick, being in the hospital, being diagnosed, sitting around and thinking about like where your mind goes when it wanders to those bad places, life expectancy, prognosis, all of those things. I try to rein it back. Like, these are the things I can control in the moment. I can make sure my pump is working. I can make sure I'm taking my meds on time.
Exactly.
And I try not to give worry to the things that I can't control. And that's the dialogue that I go through in my head. I do it all the time. And, you know, you can't control that your mind wanders all the time, but I do try to rein it back as much as possible.
I love that. And do you keep your mind on things like on projects? And do you kind of like, for me, it was music and is music, you know, which is my thing. I call it one of my 5 key principles, creative expression, you know, but I'm like, when I go into that world of like, oh, then I quickly shift my focus onto something that inspires me or something that is futuristic, you know, that I can focus on. Is there something you focus on specifically to get yourself out of it?
So I'm a compartmentalizer. So like, I like to pack in a box and I put it away and I don't think about it again. So then like when people bring it up, so like 2 weeks ago, people were bringing it up all the freaking time. They just wanted to talk about it. And I'm like, listen, I put that away. We're not bringing it out again. Go.
Yes.
But it's hard, right? So like, I like to stay busy. The boys keep me busy too. And like, I can't like often think of things when I have like 2 kids screaming at me, you know, like, so like I'm a busybody. Like, I am always trying to do something. I took a job while like in the middle of these 2 weeks. Like, I was just like, I will do anything and everything to not think about what's happening that I can't control. Like I can control being in this job. I can control the stuff that's due for this job. I can control, feeding my kids. I can clean my house. I can go shopping, all of those things. Like those are things that I can actually physically do. And I don't sit around and just think about it.
Exactly. So sort of keep yourself busy in your life and do what you do.
I went to the hospital by myself. I was in the hospital the whole time by myself when I was diagnosed. My husband was home with the kids and he was like, you don't want me to come up there? And like, so one of my biggest things is I hate it when people come to the hospital because like, it's cool to have like somebody there and like be moral support. But at the same time, for me, my philosophy is life goes on regardless of whether I'm sick. So when it comes to bad news, when it comes to that kind of stuff, life still goes on, even though I'm dealing with all of this. So that helps me too. Right. So like somebody still has to take the kids to school. Somebody still has to pack their lunch. Like it doesn't stop just because I got bad news.
Exactly. Perspective, which is the whole everything about everything. I mean, it's exactly, it feels like you're very much like me. I'm taking credit for all the good things. I'm like, Gerry, you're just like me, but it's true. I mean, it is absolutely perspective. If there's anything else that I forgot to ask you about how you can potentially get someone out of that state of like, tell them something, anything you could share to get them out of that state.
So something that really like struck me, right? So when you asked earlier, you asked something that I wish I'd known. I wish I'd known about community, right? And something that was demonstrated to me about community and that went a long way for my diagnosis was when I was in the hospital, my doctors came in and they said, you're diagnosed with this. I cried. It was this huge ordeal. And then they said, there are these great people that you can look up, you being one of them. And they were like, you can look her up, you can look up her story. And then they said, there's actually a girl here who is going through the same thing as you. She had the same diagnosis as you. Her story is really similar to yours. And she wants to meet you. And I was like, what? And so she came to the hospital and like met me. And like she sat and we talked and, we were both on the pump and we went through this huge thing like together, kind of. The first few weeks she was like my go-to person to talk to. And I think looking back on it, like her showing up at the hospital was the great catalyst of me being in despair and me seeing that there was hope out there. And for somebody that's going through diagnosis who is sitting in the hospital and just freaking out, I highly suggest reaching out to just one person who knows what you're going through, because like my husband tried, bless him. He tried. He doesn't understand,
Exactly.
And for this girl to come to the hospital and meet me, and she didn't know who I was. She just showed up and we sat and talked, and we're still friends to this day, which is really cool. And, I've had people reach out to me on Instagram in the hospital, sitting in a hospital bed, going through the same thing I was going through. And it's really big to hear it from somebody. And I say this all the time in all of my interviews, but like to see that somebody is on their chapter 50 and you're on your chapter 1, seeing that you can get to that chapter is like the biggest part of hope. And that's like the biggest part of like overcoming all of that fear and overcoming all of that anxiety, is knowing that if they can do it, why can't you do it?
Exactly.
So that's what I would suggest. I suggest that everybody try to find somebody in their own community that has done it and that is succeeding in doing it,
I love that. That's exactly what I attempted to do coming back from the hospital. It's not easy to find sometimes. Not easy to find, but you find a lot of what you don't want to find, but to keep seeking until you find that. And just as a final thought, because I like to also take this out of the world of illness and, all that. There's so much that I've learned from going through this about life, death, family, the things that are important, And I'm like, damn, like if I could have told myself these things without having had to have an illness, are there those things for you that you wish you could have known without having had to go through all of this?
Yes, absolutely. I would say I wish that I had known how to respect my body pre-diagnosis. I feel like that probably would have gone a long way, like just like in general, like being a woman, like I wish that I had respected my body more. I wish I'd been more careful about what I put in it, like the people that I let be part of my life. Like I wish that like it's just like my body in general.
Yes.
But I think one of the biggest things I wish that I feel like they always tell you when you're growing up, live life to its fullest, carpe diem, all of that stuff, right? But like I feel like, being sick taught me that meeting my mortality was not as scary as we made it out to be before, right? I have a lot of faith. I feel like I know where I'm going when I die. So like growing up as a high schooler, you're always scared. You're not scared of dying, right? But I feel like as an adult, as you get older, you start realizing, I don't want to die. Like I'm kind of scared of dying. And I feel like being sick and like getting older, and I realized that like I met my mortality a lot younger than a lot of people have to, right? Like people that are in their 40s are living, their best lives, smoking 20 packs of cigarettes a day and, not having to meet that mortality. And I feel like for me, having to meet it so young made me realize that I just don't need to worry about all that petty stuff. Exactly. That like there was just a lot of like energy. I was putting a lot of energy. I was doing a lot of things with my body that I probably wouldn't have done if I had understood how short time really looked,
Yes, I do know. Yeah.
I know you know.
I mean, I do. I'm trying to like let this be your interview. I'm like, because I understand everything you're saying so much, But it's great. Is there anything I have not asked you, Gerry, that you would like to share? Anything about anything at all?
I feel like something that I always like to harp on is that you know your body best. And I didn't know like that my voice was important in those situations in a hospital, So like the doctors will talk at you, but I didn't realize that in those conversations with a doctor that I also have a voice. Yes. It's my body. It's my team. You are trying to keep me alive. It's my life. Exactly. So my voice matters. What I have to say about how we're going to do treatment, about how you're going to do all of these things matter. Yes. And I just didn't know that it was going to be that important to find my voice in a patient setting,
I do. Yes, that's great.
Nobody knows your body like you. Right. Doctors learn about it in a book, but we're living it out. It's completely different when you have to look at what the symptoms say they're going to be and then what they really look like in real life, And I just didn't know how important me telling a doctor, no, that's not working for me.
Right. Exactly.
Was going to be for my treatment going forward. And I feel like a lot of patients that are, just starting out have no idea like how much they should have a say in their own treatments.
Exactly. They let it happen for them and don't really speak up. It's true. And I was just thinking of one thing you were saying, and then of course it left. It's gone. It's so far gone. I'm thinking of a beach in Hawaii now. Yeah, great interviewer. I'm like, woo.
When you're meeting a team for the first time, go.
This is the most professional interview of all time. I love it. How do you keep up with 2 kids that are boys on top of it? So I'm sure filled with energy. How do you do this physically? Like, I'm exhausted. You're exhausted. But I mean, how are you at the place? Because just so I understand your state, because mine fluctuated, of course, to where I could, do little jogging, but then it fluctuated to where I couldn't even move. Are you able to kind of physically keep up enough to like run after them and like, or is it a real strain physically?
So, I mean, sort of. So like, I don't run after anybody. I taught them. So like when I was diagnosed, they were like 1, right? So like they've grown up with me as I've gone through this illness. Right. So like we have been very fortunate, and I don't know if that's just good parenting. I'll pat myself on the back. I know what you're going to
say, and it is good.
But like we taught them, mommy's kind of sick. Mommy is not going to chase you. So if I tell you that you need to stop and we're in a parking lot, you'd better stop. Like I expect you to stop. And like I've been with people whose kids don't stop. Mm-hmm. And I don't have the energy to chase a kid, So like luckily the boys are very good at that. But like they're also 4, right? So they only understand to an extent. They're very demanding. I don't push it. any farther than I have to.
Mhm.
I did just play kickball the other night. So like, am I at a good state? Yeah, I'm at a pretty good state. I would say that when I was really sick and I was struggling a lot, we spent a lot of time on the couch watching movies and eating popcorn, you know? But I also feel like having kids has pushed me to get better. And I don't know, like mentally, if that's just a thing or if that's like an actual physical thing. But like, I don't need to do cardio because I actually have kids that I have to chase around all the time. So like, I feel like I wanted to get better so that I could chase them around. So I feel like it's been really good motivation to push myself. Like,
Yes,
I'm tired today, but I still want to take them to the park. We can do this, you know?
exactly.
As a mom all the time, you feel like you have to do more.
Right.
And so I feel like I'm constantly pushing my body harder than I feel like the average person would if they didn't have kids. Like if
Yes.
I didn't have kids, I would probably just sit around all day and do nothing. But like it helps me go, and it helps me go and do things that I wouldn't probably normally do if I didn't have kids. So
Exactly.
I
And
think it's
focus
good
off.
and bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like I'm, like for sub Q, like I'm in hell week for like a week and a half usually. And I'm like, I literally cannot move from this fetal position. You're gonna have to get your own milk. Like I can't do it for you.
Well, you brought
Um,
up your kids right, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I love
Um,
hearing that. That was just genuine me interest, because it's a lot. I already know, forget kids, no kids, it's a lot. I love the way you think, and it's so great to hear from you.
I'm super glad I got to meet you. I have literally followed your story when you were in the hospital. It was
Wow.
crazy. I was like waiting for all of the updates. I had
Oh,
to know if you were going to
wow.
be okay. It's just because like you are like one of the big PH people, So like we as a community have always looked to you, and no pressure, right? But like now that
Exactly. I might have
no
to
pressure.
survive, you know what I mean?
Now that you're doing better, that's awesome, especially because like I like any interview I've ever seen you in, I felt like we talk the same, we kind of think the
Right.
same.
We do think the same. Yeah.
And I felt like that was really motivating for me, especially within the last 2 weeks talking about transplant, doing all that stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so I knew that it was that somebody out there had done it. So like I knew that if somebody could do it, I could also do it, looping all of this into a circle. So I'm
Exactly.
super glad I got to talk to you. I was so excited.
Jerry, thank you.
Thanks for hanging out with me.
Thank you. And please continue to get better, and we'll stay in touch.
Cool. Keep in touch. I'd love to, keep up and see how you're doing.
Good luck, Jerry. I'll talk to you
Bye.
soon.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.